I'm doing there. So the first one is code blocks, and we are familiar with code blocks. You just simply go to code blocks. Okay, so my code blocks doesn't have a compiler, so we need to fix that so that we can be able to work with code blocks. But I can just do a simple showcase of how we worked with code blocks. It's basically revision. We go to create new project, console application, we select go, next. At this point is the only change that we've got. We select C++, we put the title of the project, intro, we select where we want to save our work, code blocks, click on next, and then the moment we are done, we now have a C++ program. So that is how we can work with our C++. So this is one way of actually working with our C++. If you remember, I also said we can work with Visual Studio. We can also create our program in Visual Studio as well. But I'll show you that as we proceed. So our Visual Studio is also installed. Let me open Visual Studio. Okay, so this is what our Visual Studio looks like. And we can do more than one project or one type of project. But the type of project we want to work with is a Windows application project. So we click on new. And it's supposed to read new project. Right? As you can see, there's many types of projects we want or we can work with. So we want to go to where it says Visual Basic. And then under Visual Basic, we select Windows Forms application. And then we select the name, or we type out the name, and we can call this phone book. That then becomes the name of our project. And you can see how long it takes to load. So you might need to be patient depending on your computer. If it's fast enough, it will not take time. If it's slower, it will take a bit of time. And then that is what we expect to view in our Visual Basic. So this then becomes our Visual Basic for the Windows Forms application. I also mentioned that we can do a C++ project as well. Okay, so we can go to File, we go to New, we select Project, and then this one doesn't have C++, but maybe let's actually do it this way. Let's go to our documents and we go to our code blocks. Where did we save this file? Save project as right. Let's just do it this way. I don't know why it's not showing me something for code blocks, but I can come to intro. I right click on main. I open with uh, oh, it's actually not giving me an option to open with Visual Studio. Okay, that's still fine. We can work with it on the next platform. So this is the next platform that we'll be working with. Maybe I can just give you a brief background of how this works. So this, I think, of all the languages, is the easier one. It's the easier one because we just need to know how to put certain things. In this simple task, we can actually make a running application in a matter of minutes. So the first thing that we see here, if I enlarge it a bit, we call this a form. So it's a Windows form. At the same time, we can also view the following. If we right click on it, we can go to where it says view code, and then it gives us that, where we have a class. If you remember, when you're working with C, we're working with mainly functions, but for our Visual Basic, we work with classes. So classes and functions will now make sense because we can actually apply them in Visual Basic. We can also apply them in our PHP, although classes are not very common in PHP. Okay. At the same time, we can actually write some code, right? Whereby I can put message box dot show like that. That then becomes my code. But it's giving me an error because we can't actually have it in this particular section of our code. And so we want message box dot show. Let me just cut it and put it in an event. And the event we want is a load. So I've got a form event, I've got a load event, and then now I can put my code, which is messagebox.show, as follows. We then want to say, welcome to the phone book application, like that. And as we have it that way, we have created our first 2 lines of code in our Visual Basic. Okay. At the same time, we've also got our form where we can put whatever content we want to put on the form. And this becomes something we can work with or we can use based on what we want to put on this particular form. So for example, on the left side, I've got a toolbox whereby I can select any of these items and put them on the form. So let's say I put a label like that so that we see what our label does. Each element that we add has got its own preferences or its own properties that we can work with. So if you go to the right bottom corner, you can actually see the text of the label. So I can double click that and put phone book, and then we've got something that we can work with. So this is how our Visual Basic would work. We've got a front end and a back end. The front end is where we design what we want to see. The back end is where we put the code that is supposed to run in the background. And we can simply say that whichever elements we want to work with, we can build our system as we progress or as we do whatever it is that we want to do. Then at the same time, you can see that this green icon over there is similar to what we've got in our code blocks. If I click on it, it will then run our application. If there are no errors, our application should show up and give us whatever it is that we would have put. Although if you've got an antivirus, the moment you start running this, it will give you an error. So what we entered there was called the message box, which then gives us that pop-up that says, welcome to the phone book application. As you can also see at the right top section, we've got the memory, CPU usage, events that are running whilst we're running this program. If I click on OK, we then see our phone, which is phone book. So as Stans would have created our first Visual Basic application. And it. At the same time, to just close this program, we click on X, and then the program closes. So that's our Visual Basic. Not so complicated, but we will learn as we go. At the same time, let's also just see where that program went. So with our C, we know that this was part of how we would know that our program is there. We've got a project file and a main file. But for our Visual Studio now, we need to go to Visual Studio 2015. We need to go to Projects. And then in Projects, we need to go into Phone Book. And then Phone Book gives us the project file outside of the Phone Book folder. If we double click in the Phone Book folder, we can then see the contents of our project. So our files would be more than our C++, where each file does different things. At the same time, it creates an executable, which is found in our bin, our debug, and then you then actually find there is a phone book dot executable, which is this one. So even outside of Visual Studio, I can double click on it and it opens the application that I've created. So in other words, it makes life a little bit easier. And whatever it is that you draft, you can actually draft it from your head and you add the components that you want to add until your application is done. Okay, I've shared quite a number of things. I'm sure there are questions now. Questions, please. Okay, if there are no questions, let us proceed. And let us proceed. This is Visual Basic. Visual Basic, like I said, will give us a visual aspect to whatever it is that we're dealing with. And that which we are dealing, we then need to at least know how to interpret whatever it is that we've got and use that for our learning. So since you said it's data and risk management, we would need to have a bit more content on how that works, and we'll be working with the three languages, like I said. Yes. Yes, we will. We have notes for what we need to work on. Although, like you can see with this platform, it's totally new to what you have done before. So you need some notes and you need some content to actually back this up so that you can at least work with whatever it is that you need for this particular project itself. Because some of the content that is there, we may not have time to actually go through it and use it to its max. But we'll have some notes to support whatever it is that we want to work with, hopefully assignments for mini projects that we can work with. I'll try and make those assignments interesting in that I will consider stuff we know. For example, if I go on Task Manager, right, you can see these things. I don't know if it's visible for everyone. Can you see everything that we have here? I'm sure for those who are close by, you can see. And like I said, we're also recording, so you can go through um, the video. This thing that we've got at the top here, we've got it in Visual Basic. We can actually recreate this program and implement some of the concepts that are there. So the top section, we call that a menu. This section here with these processes, we call this a tab control. The content that we've got here, we've also got it as a list view. We've got this element here that if I select any of these elements, I can actually be able to click on this button. Whereby the moment I click on it, I can actually be able to do whatever it is that I want to do. So we can actually create a system that's exactly like this using our Visual Basic. So with some of the tasks that I'll be giving you, I'll try and create a scenario whereby you can work with Visual Basic to create a system that you can be able to learn from. So that'll be one of the tasks we'll be working with as we are going through with this learning phase. Yes. No, we can't do for each and every language, but we'll do one project for one of the languages. So it can be Visual Basic, it can be C++, it can be PHP. It's not optional per se. We'll just do one language munhu. So it can be download one wese vari kutadza PHP ndokupai PHP. And download munhu wese kutadza Visual Basic ndokupai Visual Basic. Download munhu wese kutadza C++, but C++ kasho. Those one unenge wachiita sei? Unenge wachiziva. But we just then want to at least work with it so that we can do as much as is possible and learn so that if you want to get into full-time programming, you can be able to work with it and do slightly more than we are doing here. And At the same time now, there's the other aspect of our learning, which is Taita system yedu, Taita setup yedu. We've got everything that we need to know. We now need to get into the next aspect. I hope my office will not let me down. We need to do what is called a database. So for databases, you guys will have a bit of an advantage because you're also doing, or we are also supposed to be doing databases. So for databases, they work as follows. We need to create a database. And one way of creating a database is to use Microsoft Access. And Microsoft Access see why I don't like Microsoft. So many questions and so many things that we don't want to be able to work with. So one way of actually working with databases is to work with Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access is a part of your Office package whereby you can be able to create a database. But a database also comes with the functionality of creating a website. So you can actually be able to create a database, then link your database to either your Visual Basic or to your PHP application. So all those things can actually be done. So part of your learning would then be to see how you can integrate between languages. So you can have one system that gets into Visual Basic, gets into C++, gets into PHP, all using one platform. So the user doesn't necessarily need to know how that is working, but the programmer needs to at least understand how that works. Indeed. So for example, we can then come to our database. Exactly. My disadvantage with the unlicensed software. Okay, I will sort this out and then have it work in the next lesson. But not to worry, we can still proceed with our databases in the following order. So, if you remember, I mentioned we've got XAMPP, which will give you a control panel that looks like that. In the next lesson, I'll just show you how we can actually work with XAMPP, installing it and working with it until we get to what we want to get to. So we can click on Start so that we start Apache. We click on Start so that we can start MySQL. MySQL is another version of a database. So what I wanted to use Access for, we can work with MySQL. Okay, so for us to be able to view what our databases offer, we need to do the following. We need to open a browser. And in doing this, we are simply creating a website locally. Okay, so we will do the following. Our local website, we need to actually work with localhost. And then localhost gives us that. So the moment you install your XAMPP and you see that you have done everything properly, and now you can start developing your application. So let's get into the database. Remember, I mentioned we've got our database, which is our PHP MyAdmin. I can open in the new tab, and then you get to that particular platform. So it's not very visual, but we can actually use it to do certain things for our database. Indeed. So before we actually get into a database, we might need to have some content that guide us to what we want our database to be about. Okay, let's open Notepad++, because we can use it for quite a number of things. And at least with this one, I can increase the font so that even with the projection, you guys can view. Right. So we need to have the following concept for our table or for our database. A database simply is a collection of tables that are interconnected. So what that then means now is we'll need to at least know how each element works. So for example, we can have several tables that are interconnected. Let's say we come to your registration process. Your registration process at one point required your application ID. The moment you put your application ID, it would then also require your national ID and your date of birth. And then you recently did this, so it's not any new information. So you needed your application ID, you needed your ID, you needed your date of birth. And then the moment you enter that, it then picks that information from somewhere. And then it gives you what you have done. The next part would then be the moment you get that, it then tells you there is missing information. So that missing information would then be in relation to tables. So let's say we create the first table, and the first table will be TBL student. And so student becomes the table name. We then want values for the student, whereby we want a reg number, we want a name, we want a surname, we want a program, we want an ID, we want the year. And so this then becomes our first table. So we know that this is a student who's got a reg number, who's got a name, who's got a program, who's got an ID, who's got the year of study, right? So maybe we can actually put that as year of study, like that. But like we are saying, outside of this, we've got other things that our program should be doing. But for the purposes of just this example, we can just see what we need to do to create our table. And then at this particular instance, we also need to have the name of the database. So this is our table, but we also need to have the name of the database. So we can call the name of the database UZ data, something like that. Okay, or rather we can just say student data, like that. That then becomes the name of the database that we want to work with. So let's just go back to our PHP MyAdmin, as you can see, this is what our database looks like. And we might need to know some of the things that we see in our PHP So to the left side, where I'm highlighting there, I've got different databases that I've got with different information. So for example, let's say I select this database, right? It will give me the following. There is a users meta, there's a systems info, suppliers list, stocks, you name it. And let's pick the users table. And then in the users table, you then actually realize that we've got the following. We've got the ID, we've got the meta field, we've got the meta value. That's for our table. And the table is called, oh, I actually picked the wrong one. I wanted users. I didn't want this one. Okay. So for our users, we've got our ID, our first name, middle name, last name, username, password, avatar, last login, date added, date update. Okay. This then becomes our table. But this has got a lot more information than we need to know as of now. Let's create our own database. So we said the name of the database is student data. Click on copy. We come to our local host, we paste, and we create our database. And then with our database, it then asks us for a table. We said our table is table student. So we copy that, we paste into our table name. We come back to our content. We've got 6 items, which is reg number, name, surname, program, ID, and year of study. So here we then say we want 6 columns. We then go to create, and then we've got something that looks like that. Right, so we then want to copy and paste this information in our table. So the first one will be, in fact, let me just copy all of them. We come to this. I think I need to do one so that we finish properly. So this then becomes reg number. This becomes name. This becomes surname. The next one becomes program. The next one becomes ID. The next one becomes year of study. Like that. So we've got reg number, name, year of study, surname, and ID. The next thing we need to do now is to have the type. The type becomes the content or the information we want to have. So for our reg number, we can then put it as variable character, and we can then put 50 as our length. Our name as well, we can also have it variable character. We can then put it at 50 as well. Our surname, it's a variable character. We put it at 50. Our program can be a text. We don't put a size. Our ID is also a text. We can put it at 50. Year of study, we can then put it as a year, like that. So if we've done everything correctly, we can preview and we see that language. So what we've got there, we call that SQL, and that is how we can create our table. So it's also part of what you might need to know for our creation of database. We click on close and then we save. If everything was in order, our table now exists. And so we've got our ID, our program, our surname, our name, our reg number, and year of study. I've got one question. I was doing this and I then realized we've got a problem. What if I create another table and it's got ID? Does ID give us what we need, or do we need to actually specify what ID is? Because among my tables akawandisa, ID is confusing. So we might need to specify it a little. So at the same time, we can click on number 5. We click on change. We then put national ID. And then we save. And then we actually realize that within our table, we have changed the ID to national ID. Right. At the same time, we can also add information to this table. So then find to add information, we now have something slightly different, whereby we can put a reg number, H, we can put our name, we can put our program, we can put our national ID, we can put our year of study as 2022, we can put the next value, we put the surname, oh, my mistake, I was entering on the wrong place. I need a reg number there. I need a program. I need a national ID. I need a year of study. Click on go. And then if I come back to my table student, I actually then notice that I've added 2 rows, whereby I've got my reg number, the name of the student, the surname, the program, and the national ID. So what this then simply means is that is how we can work with our database. So as you can see, we had our application, which was Visual Basic. We also have our application, which is our database. So these two elements don't actually work together. Since they don't work together, we then now need to figure out a way of actually saying, with our database, it's doing this. With our application, it's doing that. So we link our database to our application so that we have one merged application that we can actually implement whatever it is that we are hoping to achieve with the database and with the application. And I don't know if this is clear enough. Are there any questions so far with our databases? Hello? What? Right. So, like I was saying, yes. Any text editor, we can actually use any text editor so that we can be able to do whichever elements we find easier for us to actually work with. And then, so this then becomes our database side to things. So we've got our database, we've got our application. We need to link the database and the application so that they work together and we do whatever it is that we are hoping to achieve. And then the next part now outside of this, we now have the PHP side, where with the PHP side, would also need to have the following. We now need to know what we are hoping to do. And so for us to actually work with PHP, we do the following. We come to our C, and then on our C, we go to XAMPP, and in our XAMPP, we go to htdocs. htdocs is where our website would be residing. So to do that, we then need to create a folder that we call D25, whereby D25 would then be our website. If we come back to our browser, we can go to localhost, and then we put D25, and then we can see what our website would look like before we have any extra additions to our system that you need to have and need to understand how a website works. So if we create our folder, we can actually go to that folder and see what that folder does. And in this particular instance, it just tells us index of D25. So index of D25 simply means we don't have an index page. So our index page becomes the first page that we work with within our website. And so we can actually create an index page and then do the following, right? We come to file, we go to save as, we then need to locate D25, we then put it as index, we then come to the type of file that we want to work with. It's called a PHP file. Right? And we click on save, and we can say website, like that. So we can just save it as website. If we come back here, we could see that index of T25. If I refresh, it then actually shows us it is a website. So as it stands, we have created a website. And so we can also use this website to connect to a database. So the same database that we have created, we can actually connect to it using our website. We can also connect to that same database using our Visual Basic application. So database redu rinokwanisa kushandisa zvinhu two at the same time. So application yetiri nayo pacomputer yetainstall new website zokwanisa kushandisa same database. And so that is what we are then trying to build and work with, so that we have something that is unique and user friendly for our work, or to be able to do whatever it is that we want to work with. And so that is how we start working with our code. But it's also not as easy as I have put it there, because we now need to have some content or some context to how our website works, or to how our websites will be able to work. So we can come back to our index.php, and then we now need to learn what are known as tags. So our tags simply have the following markup. We've got an opening and closing bracket. We've got HTML. We've got an opening and a closing bracket, which is our HTML. We've got another tag called the header tag. We've got another tag called the title tag. So our tags help us to learn how we can use this. So let's say this website is a for lack of a better word, we just call it home, and we put some content within our home, which is body, and then we can now put welcome, like that. So those are our tags. Because we are using Notepad++, it does not give us tags, but we have to enter them manually. So if I refresh, you can actually now see that I've got welcome, and then the top of the page now reads home. So home is our title, welcome is the content that we have put within our page. And so our tags help us to actually create something that we want to see and have within our website. But some of you might then ask, what have tags got to do with PHP? PHP now would be the following. We'll need to put a tag similar to the one we've put there. We need to put question marks. We then need to put PHP, and then we need to put what we want our PHP to give us. So we can say echo I don't know if it's single or it's double quotes. We can then put echo welcome, you are Stanley. Okay, if all right, if I've saved it correctly, let's refresh, and voila. So this is a result of our PHP, which means our PHP is a tag. Our welcome is not within a tag, but it's actually something that we have typed out, but our PHP now actually gives us the output. Welcome, you are Stanley, and we've got it from using that aspect of our particular PHP script. And I will pause for now. Are there any questions? Let's get into that and you can see what that does. Okay, so with a PHP website, it will look something like this. So this is Child's Play. Got local host and okay, let me reduce the font so that you can see what the website looks like. So this is what our website looks like. We've got a username, we've got a password. We click on login, and then that is what we've got. So we've actually logged into a system. We've got whatever it is that the system is telling us. By the way, I did not do this system, it's someone else's system. You can have your loans, like it's saying. You can have your payments, like it's saying. You've got your borrowers, like it's saying. You've got your loan plans. You've got your users. Okay, so for example, I can add a new user. Let's just say this is Simon. We also want to have a password. We then need to put the type of person they are. Click on save. And then now we have another user called Simon. And we've got their password on it. So, like I mentioned, we've got a database to this system. So this is your PHP. And it, since it's your PHP, this is what the user sees. So this is what you are trying to create. But how did you start from this particular instance? You come to your htdocs, you come to the folder of this particular project, and then let's say we want index, which is this one. I right click, I open with Notepad++. Here's what the programmer says. So the programmer should know what all this information does. But the user is just supposed to be happy and they see that. Yes. Yes, you can. Well, first of all, I'd given you a link of YouTube video. Did you go through those? There's some videos that I'd given you. No, this year. I sent them to two of your colleagues and they sent them on one of your groups. If not, I'll resend those videos. Also, that's the reason why I've just been saying, let's also do a recording of this one. When we are done with the lesson, you can also go through it and try and follow some of the content that is there. Recommended content is there. One website I would actually advise you guys to work with is W3 Schools. It can give you the basics of how you can do some of these things. So when you've got these elements, let me actually also put it here. W3schools.com. You can actually use this website to work with anything PHP website related. So it gives you PHP, it gives you CSS, it gives you page layouts, you name it. Another one that you can also work with is www.java2s.com, which gives you basically PHP, C++, and Visual Basic concepts. However, you'd also need to have some sort of concept around how some of these things work. In that, if you have the concept, you can be able to actually do some of these things by yourself. I'll try and see if there's ways around you getting this information. Those are some of the websites you can work with, and you can do whatever it is that comes your way so that you learn and get a better understanding of this. I don't know. Are there any other questions? Okay. So what we would need to do now is the following. Maybe go through a few extra things. This is one way of actually having our PHP. There's another site that I've got here. Let me just see the name of the sites. I forget since I don't use them most of the time. Let's see this one, what it has. Local hosts, CI blog. All right, this one has an error somewhere. See this one. Yes. Okay. This is another different type of page, but I don't think we can learn much from that one. Let's see the SMS one. Okay. So as you can see, it's another way of working with our PHP. And I don't remember the details for this one. Let me just try. Forgot the details for this particular system, but I'm sure in the next one we can be able to get it running. Question? Not a question. Okay, so let us proceed. Outside of this, let's have the next bit. We have been also told about Visual Studio Code, which I can just then take the chance to show you what that looks like. You can also do all three languages in Visual Studio Code as well. You just then need to get extensions and have those extensions running on your machine. So it might also give you a better output in that you just then put the extensions that you need to do whatever it is that you can work with. Okay, so as you can see, I've also been using a Visual Code for PHP, and there's different aspects of PHP that we might not be able to work with in our learning, but I can show you how we can work with different things. So for example, I can go to File and then go to Open File. Because my internet is not on, certain things might not work. So for example, I can open that. That is my PHP file. That's the first file I want to open. I can go to File, I go to Open File. I can select my code blocks file. I'm now working with code blocks. I can also do the same with my Visual Studio, where I can just select my Visual Studio. I go to my projects, phone book. I then need to have form1.vb. I click on open, and then I've got my code. So in other words, with Visual Code, it gives me all the code. I can also run the code, but I'll then now need to have extensions. So my Visual Code is not set up for the extension. So some of the things I may not be able to use to show you how Visual Studio Code works. Any questions? No questions. So we are good to go. Okay, it's either one of two things. Either I've been moving too fast, or I've been moving too slow, or too fast. No, you can't say. Okay, so let's have it as notes. We have them as notes. So here's what we are supposed to learn overall, right? Learning for diploma, right? We are supposed to learn how to use variables, how to use control statements, how to use functions where applicable, how to use classes also where applicable, how to use databases, how to implement a functional program, how to document program development, and then finally, final project. At the same time, assessments on language concepts. Okay, so that's basically most of what we need to learn as we proceed with our learning. But at the same time, let's sort of go back to what we have done, especially with Visual Basic and with PHP. And then we'll try and add a bit more to what we already have, and we see how that can be beneficial to us. At the same time, we've got our video. Part of the reason why I was moving a bit fast is I know you can be able to go through this video and progressively learn some of the concepts. Okay, so as it stands, we've got Visual Basic. Visual Basic has the following. It has this interface whereby we said this is a form, which is the interface of our application. This is the code, which is the interface of our particular interaction with our platform. And at the same time, we said we've got a toolbox, which has our elements. If you open the toolbox in the code section, you will not view any tool. However, if you go to the design section and you go to our toolbox, you can be able to view specific elements from our toolbox. Okay, we can also add items. For example, we added a phone book. We can add a label again. We can also add what is known as a text box, so that we've got a text box and a label. And to add whichever value, we simply double click on text box. We simply double click on label. That way we will have a label and a text. So this is also called, or part of our object-oriented programming. So with our object-oriented programming, we then want to learn how we can use these objects within our particular platform or within our particular system. So this then means we can actually select the label, go down to the properties window, which is at the right bottom corner. We can then double click on the name property and we put that as name. We go to the second label, we do the same, and we say selling, like that. So this then means as we are designing our system, we're actually getting each element. However, at the same time, if we go to our code, we can actually then get to see different events now. Each object that we have put has got its own event. So I can come here and see that I've got a form 1, which is the main form. I've got a label 1, a label 2, a label 3, a text box 1, and a text box 2. So each of these elements can then now have its own event. So for example, if I select text box, I can then pick an event that I want to have on my element. So what this then means now is I can be able to put whatever code I want for each element. So each element individually can have its own code. So that is now how we work with our Visual Basic in terms of the object. So that's also as a side note for each element that we are working. I don't know if that section is clear enough. So maybe in summary, we can then say the following. We've got a form, which is written form 1. It's also got its own properties. We've got objects that we can add to the form, which also have their own properties. And then each of those properties, we can work with them to create whatever it is that we want to create using our Visual Basic. So as an intro, that's more or less what we'll be working with in terms of Visual Basic. I don't know if there are questions or it's still pretty vague at the moment. At the same time, we've got what is known as a solution explorer, which is this one, right? I can also select the form. I go to rename, but this is risky. If you rename it in the solution explorer, you might end up messing up your application, because each and everything that we have done in this particular space is recorded as you are developing your application. So only change certain things when you're absolutely sure you know what is actually happening on your system or within your system. And so that is how we can work with our Visual Basic. We have more content that I think we can explore, and we'll also explore our Visual Basic as we go. So what can be easier is, I think we do a language at a time instead of having many languages all at the same time. And right. So this is our Visual Basic. Let's go back to our PHP. So PHP, if you remember, I just simply said it's now just a matter of tags. And the tags give us different things that would be wanting to work. But here's how we're supposed to pretty much do our PHP. We are supposed to have a concept or a framework of how this PHP is supposed to work. So for the most part, we need to have HTML and CSS as part of our learning. And then we'll have PHP, because PHP becomes tricky because it's mainly a scripting language. So since it's a scripting language, we then need to know how to actually put our script. So for example, we can have a link whereby our link simply does the following. We can then direct it to www.google.com, and then we close our tag, and then we say Google, like that, right? So what this then means is we've actually created a link, and what does our link show us? If we come back to our page, we can actually see that we now have Google, and then welcome, you are standing. So in other words, this is a link. But since we don't have internet, if I click on it, it won't give us something. But it's part of what we will then be learning as we're using our building blocks to do the basics of creating a website, then implementing the PHP side of things. And then at the same time, at any given point in time, let's go back to our htdocs. We go to the one that we've recently opened, which is this one. We've got our files, which are the following files. We've also got, for example, our CSS, where our CSS is also another scripting language we can work with. Let's just open one CSS file and we see what it looks like. With our CSS, it will then look like that, whereby we've just got a list of some of the things that we find in our HTML, but being defined in terms of color, in terms of size, in terms of positioning, in terms of whatever it is that we might want to have within our page. So our CSS becomes part of our HTML. How do we then get our CSS into our HTML? We need to then create separate files for CSS, import them into HTML, and then work with our CSS and HTML to have a design that is unique or user-friendly to whatever it is that we are hoping to do. And I don't know if there are any questions or any areas where you need me to clarify so that we can iron those out. That's not the case. We are saying